Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan, the voice behind ThatKaitoDan, and welcome to my review for RWBY Volume 5 Episode 13, Downfall. Before we get started though, just a quick little update on the top 10 RWBY Chibi Seasons 2 skits video that was promised for last Thursday. Sadly, I had some major microphone issues that caused issues for a few days, and because I had to make sure the microphone was actually working in time for the next reaction recording, I had to put the chibi video on hold until it was fixed. Thankfully, the fact that you're actually hearing me right now means that I got it sorted, so within the next few days, the countdown video will be out. Either way, sorry for the delay guys, and I hope you still enjoy the video once it finally comes out. Other than that, please also be aware that spoilers are ahead, so watch this review at your own risk. And once again, into the viewer comment section we go, and there was a lot to talk about after last week's review and episode, with all the twists and turns, and even some praising for the visuals as seen here by Trenton Dixon giving plaudits to the animation as Vinal reached the vault door. Goku Derakun, meanwhile, was quick to highlight that we only got half the story when it comes to Hazel's reasoning that did get some flack from some in the fandom. But of course, the big chatter was all about that final scene with Raven being revealed as the true Spring Maiden. And I believe Red Lantern Reviews does a fine job of summing up our general reaction. Remember to please leave your thoughts on this episode in the comments down below and see if they feature in the next review next week. So what did last week offer us? Oh, you know, just Jean's semblance being finally unlocked, Hazel going full on Hulk, Vinal being clawed out, and Raven pulling the rug out from both us and Cinder's feet. So safe to say it was a wild time, and it set the bar quite high for this next episode to match. But did it? Or was this a downfall in more ways than one? Let's find out. We open up right back into the action with the Strawberry Sunrise sisters of Yang and RWBY taking on M and Merc. And straight away, I love how you can tell these two are such a close-knit pair even in battles, as they switch opponents without even saying a word between them. It's a nice way to try and get the drop on their rivals, and for us, we see how strong their sisterly teamwork bond is in the process. Mercury, however, does quickly disarm RWBY, but he spends too much time being cocky before he gets headbutted. Another cool little moment there, seeing this time RWBY on the good side of that move compared to her last hand-to-hand matchup. While this is going on, Jean is still helping Weiss recover, and he's starting to understand his semblance, as the aura wave over Weiss turns from a Jean-coloured white to a Weiss-coloured blue, and the Paladin reckons that it's not straight up healing, but he's actually using up his aura to boost the natural recovery of Weiss's aura to heal her after her life-threatening injury. Kinda like in a JRPG game where you use up your MP to heal a teammate to the point that their HP can recover by itself. Glad to get that cleared up, and through the user itself too. It helps us be as accurate as it can without any confusion when it's through Jean's eyes as he does it. And with Jean's deep pool of aura, as mentioned of course by Pyrrha in the past, Jean should be able to use enough of his aura to pull Weiss back from the brink without any risks to himself. Now I'm wondering how his semblance can grow over time with training and experience. Perhaps as a pulse wave to heal more than one person, or maybe even faster healing or healing while moving so he's not a sitting duck. Are there any possible offensive methods to this, like damaging another person's aura instead of aiding it? Either way, Weiss finally wakes up. Hooray! But the bad news is Ren is getting his ass handed to him by Hazel, and he gets zapped hard as well. Not yay! That gives Nora the green light to go and help out now that Weiss is on the mend, though Weiss still needs to wait a little bit longer before she can get back into the action. She may need to hurry though, cause even Ozpin and Crow are getting overpowered by the double team onslaught of Leo and Hazel, who calls Ozpin a monster that must be stopped. Sheesh! First calling him evil in the last episode, and now a monster in this one? Those are some really strong comments to be making, coming from someone working under Salem, and from the guy who's touted by others as having killed other people in the past. Whatever Salem did to twist this guy into a fold must have been some very convincing words. I honestly think that before this, Hazel was actually a decent guy, especially because of his morals and honest care for his sister. It's just a shame that Salem wormed her way into his head. Still think there's more to this Gretchen incident than we know of so far, but still, Hazel is proving to be a big threat. This is backed up as well by pinning down Nora and sending some sparks straight to her head. Okay, regardless of what we know of in terms of Nora and electricity, that's still a savage and painful looking move, and Samantha Island does a great job with her pain screams. But of course, if Nora can take a lightning bolt strike and live, she can pull through this, as the Thunder Girl amps up and throws the big brute flat on his back. Ozpin then chimes in with some handy information to help out Nora, revealing that Hazel's semblance is pain immunity. It's how he can inject dust into his body and not feel any of the pain as a result, and why he's such a tank when it comes to taking damage. Makes sense to me. I mean, it also makes the Bruiser an even tougher foe to beat, and now we got a supercharged, unstoppable force in Nora against a heavyweight whose attacks are actually aiding Nora, though he himself is still one heck of an immovable object. But to Nora, she doesn't care about him being immune to pain. All that matters is hitting Hazel hard enough to take him out in one blow. And boy does she make an effort, winding up one big swing of her hammer that sends Hazel flying through the entrance and outside near Adam and the White Fang, who are waiting for their cue to blow up the CCT tower. Yet even after all that, Hazel just gets back up and brushes himself down before injecting fire dust into his body. Now he's got 2 dust types charging through him. I wonder how much dust he can take before it's too much for even his semblance to bear. I mean, Yang's semblance lets her absorb a ton of damage in her own way, but we see that it isn't invincible, and we see her eventually get knocked out if it's too much to handle. So is there a limit to the amount of dust crystals that Hazel can have at one time? And how long can he go before he potentially has to stop? Questions for later, cause right now, Hazel's back on his feet, while most of our heroes are barely hanging on, and it's not looking good. Good thing backup has finally arrived, and we don't have to pay the DLC for it too. Yep, that's right, Blake has finally made it to Haven. About time too. We're not the only ones that are happy to see the cat girl, as Adam is surprised yet chuffed to see that Blake, after all of his attempts to get her back, has just made it that much easier for him. Now she's actively chosen to stand up to Adam instead of running away. But when Adam rejects her latest demand for him and his group to stand down, we see that she indeed isn't here alone. In comes her army of Faunus from Kuokawana, alongside Sun, Gira, and Kali, plus some extra aid from the Mistral police force. And as you can see, the recruit shields also have the old White Fang symbol on them. A true effort to reclaim the faction to its rightful ways indeed. And it's great to see this anti-White Fang group led by Blake, not Gira. Said it before, but I see a future role as a White Fang leader in her future, only when the group is a Faunus rights organization once again, and not the revolutionary efforts that Adam is frontrunning. As the group inside are distracted by the noise outside, we see Weiss is healed enough to start moving again, and she has enough aura to kickstart a brand new glyph too. But quickly back outside, Adam is distraught that Blake has found some way to get between him and his goals, and with things looking rather bleak for the Renegade, he actually opts for a last resort move and tries to blow the CCT tower and everyone else up with him, only for that plan to literally go up in smoke and have no kaboom. Turns out Ilya got to the bombs first and shut them down. Atta girl, that's a big step on the path of redemption for you, actively stopping Adam from doing bad things. Very good to see. But damn, Adam was willing to kill himself and every other Faunus around him just to get back at the humans. At least he's dedicated? Whatever sparked this twisted side of him into being, it's gotta be something extremely personal to create such a monster of a man. Willing to say screw you to both allies and enemies. Truly, in Adam's eyes, the ends justify the means. And in a nice bit of delicious ironic justice, when he asks Hazel for advice on what to do, the big guy just says that this is his problem to fix, not Hazel's. That has to be a payback for his reckless act back with the Sienna meeting. While it's not completely throwing him under the bus, it's basically saying, you made your bed, Adam, now you gotta sleep in it. At this point, Adam is raging, and decides to straight up charge at Blake, who simply shadow clones to the side and decks him square in the head down to the ground. Okay, as much as this kinda makes Adam look a little bit weak, especially after the way he manhandled Blake back in Volume 3, I will admit that that was extremely satisfying, seeing Adam getting punked out like that. He's had that coming for a long time now, and for Blake to do the deed as well, it just makes it all the more sweeter, and helps solidify her intent to face Adam head on now. After that, Adam orders his men to start attacking, which sadly does lead into one big issue I have with this scene. The numbers are highly in the favor of Blake's group. There's less than 10 of Adam's White Fang here, not including himself, against a slew of people from Kuokawana. It's a heavy one-sided affair. Even if you take out the major characters, the villagers themselves outnumber the White Fang in spades, which sort of undermines the whole dramatic tension of this moment and the whole thing of trying to recruit these lot in the first place to take on such a dangerous threat against Haven. Okay, I get that because of the mission itself, Adam didn't really need to bring a large force with him, but the small numbers has kinda come at the cost of losing the overall need for the recruits in the first place, outside of giving Blake confidence in her efforts to take back the White Fang in the long run. Maybe we'll see Adam call in extra numbers, who knows, but it is a shame that as much as I enjoy seeing Blake and her group stand up to Adam, the surrounding action has kinda lost a bit of its weight, all because of the uneven odds. Anyway, Hazel gets literally dragged back into the action by a stinger. I guess he can survive that impalement somehow with his pain barrier boost. And that stinger is indeed from the Fit Again Weiss and her brand new Queen Lancer summon. Just in time for Weiss, RWBY and Yang to be very surprised as Blake comes into view. After many months since the fall of Beacon, we finally got Team RWBY all in one place. Heck yeah. And I would be remiss in not mentioning that Blake's surprised to see Yang especially. Now, romantic tinged or not, make of it what you will for now, Blake I'm sure definitely didn't expect to see Yang again after last seeing her out cold and losing an arm. RWBY and Weiss, I imagine she did expect him to keep on fighting, but Yang's fate was most unknown to Blake, and of course she blamed herself for what happened. So seeing Yang again is a big shocker, no questions asked, regardless of any possible added emotions involved. Yang is stunned too at seeing Blake again so suddenly, but we don't get a proper B-Union just yet. We're still in the middle of a battle, and there's bigger fish to fry, as RWBY gives Yang the go-ahead to head down to the vault to stop Cinder and Raven getting the relic. Emerald and Mercury do their best to try and get in her way, and Mercury even manages to grab a hold of Yang's robo-arm. But Yang doesn't turn around and deck the guy in the schnoz, she instead keeps a level head and focuses on what's important, the relic. It's a brief but very pivotal moment in Yang's growth. The old Yang would have stayed and fight Mercury, her emotions getting the better of her regardless of what else is going on. But after Ty's advice and her past experiences, now she composes herself and releases her arm to give her the window to jump down to the lift to focus on what is the biggest issue so far. I am very, very happy to see this moment for Yang, and I hope it does a great job in showing her character growing as the time goes on. Also, side note, with Mercury still holding onto Yang's arm, I'd just flat out laugh if it just started slapping him in the face. But alas, we carry on, and Ruby and Blake share a nod together, pretty much saying, you go focus on your fights, we'll sort everything out afterwards. And now, we move on to the main event. Down in the vault, fresh from Raven revealing herself as the true Spring Maiden and Vanal being outed as a decoy, Cinder starts to understand what just happened, while taking a guess that the past Spring Maiden, the one who ran away from Haven over a decade ago, must have trusted Raven a lot to give her such power. Definitely a possibility without knowing what truly happened to make the transfer happen in the first place, but for now, Raven's not up for responding, as she fires herself and her weapon right at Cinder, setting the stage for, honestly, the best fight in the volume and one of my favourite scenes in recent memory. Straight up, no joke, this fight is freaking fantastic. One of the volume's highlights without question, and you need to see this in full. My screen caps can only do so much. We wanted to see a Maiden versus Maiden fight, and for it to be a good one, but I don't think many of us expected how awesome it would end up being. It starts out extremely well right from the get-go too, with both Raven and Cinder showing their intent to win, and their incredible speed and strength from the word go, complete with some top-notch sword work. Though when the two clash so hard that their blades break, a shard lands in Cinder's grim arm, which, of course, has no aura protection. It's quite the double-edged sword for Cinder. On one hand, if you pardon the pun, you get the extra reach and the aura draining ability. But on the other hand, it's a big bullseye if your enemy can aim at it and do some damage. But I guess Cinder doesn't really care. She'll make herself look like a monster just to have power, as Raven notes herself. Either way, these two are in a class all their own, thanks to their fighting skill and Maiden powers, being evenly matched so far in speed and power, even off the ground in mid-air blows a la Dragon Ball Z. They're just giving it their all, and it's a real treat to watch. Kinda like the pace of Cinder vs Ozpin or the aggression of Yang vs Mercury, but it's jacked up to 11. Also, Raven starts to use other blades with yellow, blue, green and later a deep purplish variant. But we don't see any added elemental effect to Raven's attacks. If they are made from dust, I hope it's not just a cosmetic difference, and there's actually some worth in Raven having different blades to utilize. Though I guess her weapon isn't exactly the biggest focus right now, so I can live with it for the moment. Another break of the two's weapons does however result in their rising Maiden magic being unleashed out into the cave, and it's around this point where the directive touches really shine for me. It's just as energetic as the battle itself, with different camera angles and distances, plus some subtle shaking of the camera adding in some additional oomph to each impact. It's that special kind of fight in many ways just from the visuals alone, and I'm glad the extra details in the presentation is adding a grander feel to the fight beyond the animation and the occasion itself. My favourite sequence, by the way, has to be the moment that the two trade weapons in the air after losing them, just to keep up their offensive momentum. It's a cheesy bit of action, sure, but it's also pretty badass, and it keeps the pace flowing nicely. All while the pair's magic is getting charged up and creating balls of energy around them. It's insane, and I love it. Cinder by this point is starting to lose her edge against the more experienced Maiden, and is now starting to resort to bigger, bolder moves, like creating a giant flaming coal claymore sword, only for Raven to counter that with what looks like a bigger ice crystallized version of her usual sword. Whatever it is, it just looks sick, and it makes for a great shot, seeing the two ready to come together again up in the air with the red and blue lighting against the cave walls. And when the two do meet, we got big energy waves that shake up the vault tree and rock the upper levels too. Plenty of power on display, unlike anything we've seen since maybe Cinder vs Ozpin, only on a much larger scale. But Cinder does get an opening after some falling rocks split the two up, using her Grimclaw to pin Raven down and start draining the Spring Maiden power out of her, which did leave me worried. If there was any way that Cinder could pull out a victory over Raven, it would be if she can get a clean hit in with her claw. And I wonder if she did get some of the power with the amount that she managed to drain. It didn't take too long for Cinder to get some of the full Maiden power from Amber, and she came out of that with half of her magic. Good thing Raven was still aware of her surroundings, freezing Cinder in place to get squished by the rocks, and free herself before the pair then head on up to the rocks themselves for clearer ground and an even crazier battlefield. And as if this fight wasn't a thrill ride already, we get a snippet of a brand new song from Jeff and Casey. Big shout out by the way to Flint of RWBY, who got this information from Jeff himself, as we do have the lyrics for this small piece and a work in progress name for it as well. So cheers for that, man. And this song is currently called All Things Must Die. And if you look at the lyrics and the fight that they feature in, this is clearly from Raven's point of view, telling Cinder that this is her end, and in her defeat, she'll be simply forgotten. There's also a possible reference to Summer Rose with the Legend Should Scatter line if it does tie to the words on her tombstone, plus there's also a neat tie-in to the names of a group of ravens and a group of crows, the latter being of course called a murder, no relation to Arnold, while the former can be called an unkindness or conspiracy. It's a short blood-pumping addition to this hype-setting piece with the two trading blows among the falling debris, and I cannot wait for the full version. Fantastic stuff! Now it's becoming clearer who's starting to gain the upper hand, as even when she was getting pinned, Raven is starting to gain control, keeping her focus while Cinder was too emotional to adapt like Raven has, leading to the pair returning to solid ground with both taking heavy hits to their aura, but only Cinder on her knees while Raven gets to her feet. Makes sense, as I said before, with Raven being the experienced one in terms of their maiden powers, and even without that power, you could say that Raven may best Cinder in brute strength and tactical cunning, no doubt thanks to her bandit upbringing. And Cinder's tunnel vision on defeating Raven becomes her undoing once again, as she isn't aware that Vanal is still alive, though only barely. At least she's alive enough to get in one last blast at her assailant. Cinder does manage to block the attack, but it's too late. She's given Raven a free shot at her, and the bandit capitalized on it with a direct blow to her face, sending Cinder flying off the platform towards the abyss below. Her mask also gets completely damaged too, so we get a clear shot at the rough-looking wounds on her face, and as she begins to literally downfall, her maiden powers turn off, and Raven makes sure that this is the end by freezing Cinder solid on her way down. Oh boy, what a crazy end to a spectacular fight. But I gotta ask this right away, is Cinder dead? Unlike the situation with Weiss, I'm not as confident in my belief that she will make it out of this alive. True, there is some ambiguity to the whole scene, and plenty of media have taught me in the past that you should really wait to see a corpse first before you can be sure of someone's death. So even with Cinder being a forcicle heading down to a completely crumbling and brutal end, the fact that we don't see the landing and her body does make it not exactly 100% certain that she's dead. Not to mention that Raven herself broke out of Cinder's ice, and Cinder also should have some firepower left in her to melt the ice and propel herself in time to avoid impact. If she doesn't break free, there's also a possible dark horse chance that Salem could rescue her if it's within her power, perhaps via some sort of teleportation. But picture if this is indeed Cinder's death. What does that mean for the full maiden power? Was Raven her final thought? Could that mean that Raven is now a dual maiden? She doesn't show any signs of gaining a new power, so I'll say no. though Cinder could have easily thought of someone else, and most likely it being Salem. Again, it's that ambiguity of this whole thing that really makes me unsure how to read this moment exactly. Personally, I do think she will be back, and driven further into craving more power to be as feared by her enemies as she'd like to be, so she'll probably take even bigger risks than just getting one Grim Arm. But if not, then we'll have to wait and see what that will lead to next, with a big player in Salem's forces being taken out, and by Raven's hand, not RWBY's or Jean's. We still got more to focus on after that brawl, by the way, and even though I felt I needed a breather after what I just saw, Raven powers down, and in a nice bit of genuine kindness, Raven thanks the now deceased Banal for her final act, closing her eyes in a show of respect so she can finally rest in peace. It's a little thing like that that does show that Raven isn't always a stone cold bitch, but there are actual real sincere emotions within her frosty kill or be killed attitude. Now with Cinder out of the way, Raven is free to open up the vault, and boy do I love the way the vault opens. There's a serene yet strange panting appearing on the door after Raven touches it, and the door itself opens up like fans in layers. Though the true mystique and wonder comes in the vault's treasure room itself. It's not some cubbyhole in the rock, but it's instead leading to some sort of endless void of desert sand, with 3 circles parallel to the ones in the vault, and a podium for the relic, which we don't exactly get a good shot of to get a clue on what its appearance is, outside of maybe being some sort of vial. But dang, this is one hell of a weird dimension to be in, and it's a major surprise. I did not expect to see such an odd sight at all. At first, I actually thought it was the Vacuo Desert, though that would be a tad random seeing it connected to the Mistral Vault. It could just be some sort of random common sandy realm with no end in sight. It's a weird location all the same, that could have some strange meaning to it, especially since it was made by Osman's predecessor, though I do like how it's fading away almost like leaves. Very cryptic and very unsettling for such a barren land. But before Raven can head inside to grab the relic, the episode ends with the arrival of Yang, with the final episode of Volume 5 possibly containing a fight between mother and daughter for the Relic of Knowledge. If these two do fight, that should be mighty interesting. True, Raven may give Yang one last chance to join her side, but I think that ship has sailed, and Yang would do what she could to stop the relic falling into dangerous hands, even if it is at the hands of her mother. Saying that, both of them aren't exactly in the best shape right now. Raven just had a pretty hardcore fight that even with her maiden powers must have drained her out, while Yang's also running on low batteries and is short one arm, so both of them won't exactly be fighting at their best. There's also the question of would they hold back because of their family ties, or is the bridge between them burnt that strongly and the relic is too vital to risk losing, so they'll just give it their best that they could. I would say Raven would still likely win all the same, but who knows. This may even be the moment that we see Yang become the next Spring Maiden. Now, I'm not saying that Yang will kill Raven, I doubt she'd want to do that no matter the issues with her mother, but say if Cinder is alive and she comes back up to fight, she could try and kill Raven or try to kill Yang, and Raven may sacrifice herself for her daughter. It's a possibility and just plain speculation, I know, but I'm not ruling it out, and it sets up a rather nervy scenario for the volume's finale to continue. And boy, this episode was one hell of a watch. By the end of it, I was just pretty much emotionally drained, though before I go over the positives, I will point out the odd negatives. As I said before, the issues over the White Fang versus anti-White Fang fight did cripple some of the intent surrounding Blake's army recruitment in the first place, and the fight itself, which is a shame, as it was a big moment for Blake's arc. Adam being punked out as well, while fun, was a bit of surprise in how easy it was, but hopefully we still get more from these two fighting to make up for Adam's menace taking a bit of a slight hit. I do wonder though how he will get out of this, and this includes the other villains as well. The tables have seriously turned against them, and unless Salem can somehow pull some kind of trick to get them out clean, I'm not sure how we can have them escape without it being something silly given the size of their enemies. Saying that, I am pleased with what this set piece offered Blake as she made her biggest step forward in her charge against Adam. This was Blake's grand debut as a true rival to Adam for the claim of rightful leader, directing the Faunus to true freedom. And of course we got a bolder, braver Blake that wasn't running away from Adam now, that she had faith in herself and faith of those willing to stand by her to pull her through. She needed this moment of victory over Adam, even if the fight is still carrying on into the next episode. And hopefully if the White Fang story does continue, which I think it should, it's a worthwhile new chapter in Blake's growth into the leader and the person that she can become. One other negative I want to mention as well is that I wish we got more out of RWBY and Yang versus Emerald and Mercury. Yes, these two baddies aren't exactly as high on the totem pole as Cinder and Adam, but they played key roles in the past schemes that have left big marks on the sisters' lives, and I want to see them get due payback in an awesome duo fight. Even if it was just a little bit longer, I would have been a bit better receiving of this. Though given it's obvious which fight in this episode had the bigger focus, I can understand why the cut corners were there in the first place, though my sour point still remains. Beyond this though, I love the episode a ton, even away from the second half, namely due to some great character specific bright sparks. I already went over the good found in Blake's side of things, but I think Jean had a solid episode too. There's some nice banter between him and Weiss to be had, and the fact that he did save Weiss will do him wonders for some of those emotional wounds of his. Like I said last review, now he doesn't have to try and die to save someone, and hopefully his semblance unlocking will boost his confidence in the right way. He was smiling a lot more by the end of the episode. I also think Nora was a real delight in the early goings on too. Yes, it was a blast seeing her wreck Hazel, but that supportive side that kept Jean's spirit high is another reminder that Nora is just as charming a character as a supportive friend as much as she is when she's breaking legs. There's also some small praise for the tiny RWBY reunion that we got, providing a short sample of hopefully a bigger, more emotional reunion in the next episode that didn't take away from the serious predicament that the four were currently involved in, but still letting the moment have its mark, and with an effective use of little being said and just letting the expressions describe the emotions brewing fine enough by itself. But naturally, the true star of this episode is that final fight, at least for me anyway. It had a lot to live up to after the episode beforehand, and the appeal of seeing these two strong and confident women come to blows, and of course it being our first Maiden versus Maiden fight, and while Amber showed us a small taste of the Maiden capabilities in the past, this fight was something even better than that. Not only was it simply epic and a heart-pounding duel of warring pride and anger, but it was also one of the best directed, large-scale sequences in the show's runtime from my point of view. Expertly well directed and paced, it was a non-stop rollercoaster from beginning to end, while never feeling overblown or running too long. Just the right amount of timing, emotion and power to it to make it a major spectacle among RWBY fights. After many outcries for a worthwhile and well animated fight in these last two volumes, I say with full confidence that this was definitely well worth the wait, and I applaud everyone for what they delivered to this scene. Whether if it was the outstanding animation team created a flawless action piece, the actresses involved giving it their all in the voice work, the lighting and the music team backing up the visuals with even more to enjoy, it was simply fantastic and just equally terrific as well that the right victor was won, and the fact that we're already instantly moving on to another emotion-filled bout, without it feeling like it's too fast too soon with one personal fight going to the other. On the voice acting note, while there wasn't anyone who truly stood out amongst the crowd, and the overall voice acting was stellar throughout, I do want to give my voice acting gold star to Samantha Ireland, as I want to applaud her overall excellent work in making Nora such a bubbly spirited person, be it in her fights or just in her free time, capable of being a convincing warm-hearted friend and a no-nonsense beast of a fighter. It's just good stuff overall from both Sam and in general the cast itself for this episode. So in the end, while not a flawless episode, this is still one of the most entertaining portions of the volume so far. While the issues clouding over Blake's side of things does act as a small hiccup in an otherwise glorious episode, the short but sweet character moments, the killer emotive tidbits, and the jaw-dropping maiden fight was plenty enough to leave me feeling breathless by the end. I honestly don't know what to expect next for the closing episode of the volume, especially with the villains taking such a heavy body blow when all seem to be going gold for them. But as we head into that finale, I'm more than happy to say that the penultimate episode was by no means a downfall. Instead, it was an entry into the series that should stand proudly, and fingers crossed, it'll lead to a closing chapter to remember. But those are just my thoughts, time to tell me yours. Did you like what went down with Blake and Adam? Did you enjoy the maiden fight as much as I did? Do you think Cinder is dead? And what do you think will happen in the Volume 5 finale? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe and bell buttons to make sure you get every new video from me as they drop. And follow me on Twitter at ThatKaitoDan for more on all things RWBY, future content, and more. Until next time though, have a good day or good night, and peace out.